Okay, trying something a little bit new, optimizing for YouTube with the landscape here, and I have talked to someone about the acoustics in this room as well, so things are gonna get better. But I wanted to get a video out, so today I'm gonna talk about Enormous Changes at the Last Minute by Grace Paley. I read it in 2011, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, and I wrote this about it in June of that year. I think it would be difficult to declare any book the quintessential New York book. In fact, I'm not sure I can really fathom the number of books and stories I've read in my life that involve the city. Because of that, I think it's best to call Enormous Changes at the Last Minute a splendid representative of the Big Apple. I'm an imperfect judge, however. I've never visited, but it feels appropriate for me now to be able to review Grace Paley's collection of short stories as I travel to New York for the first time. Her writing is frustrating at first. She weaves a story like an abstract poem at times. She ignores much punctuation and structure, especially favoring the omission of dialogue markers. Eventually, though, you warm to her style and you begin to physically hear the multi-layered voices of her characters. Her impressionistic verses then become the welcome subjective art that they are meant to be. Often reviewers will talk about an author's voice metaphorically, but when voice is used with Paley, it is meant as a descriptor. In these stories, her exploration of New York voices is so varied and eccentric that it borders on genius. Her work is not necessarily the kind of thing that will send me out after another one of her books, but it definitely moved me to admiration. I learned things about reading, writing, and other authors as I worked and thought my way through this. It is a difficult and sophisticated read, but worthwhile if you are a fan of the American short story. And as you've seen through a number of my reviews here, and there will be many more, that I am definitely a fan of the American short story. The thing that I kept talking about voice here, I mean, you don't literally hear the voices, but she's so special and definitely unique in the way that she expresses these things, both in terms of grammar and in terms of the art that happens in these stories, that you really do get a sense of being part of the conversation. And I think that was really special. And it felt very New York to me. Again, I was reading this, I still remember reading the end of these stories as I was landing in New York to do some sort of freelance camera job. So it was my first time there. I've really only been to New York 2 or 3 more times since then, and all for work type things too. But I got the sense, especially from all of the different New York things that I had been exposed to in art leading up to this, that this was the exact sort of thing that was connected to all those kinds of New York stories. It really felt quintessentially New York, and that's why I talked about it in this way. I think it's a fantastic book. I do think it's really hard, and I think that's why I only gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I would recommend it. Definitely if you want to learn about Grace Paley, if you want to have some challenging short stories in regards to American stories, New York stories, I think this would be a good way to go with that. So I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. This was Enormous Changes at the Last Minute by Grace Paley. We are going to keep going here as we get into 2011. We're going to get into a really boring stretch. I shouldn't call it boring, but I did review pretty much every book that I read and digested for my MBA program. And that is going to start up here as we get to the fall of 2011. So some of these books may be interested to people who are in graduate business programs, and some of them might be painfully boring. But I'm going to review them anyway because I put them on Goodreads and I think it's a lot of fun. So there might be one coming up next week. So look for that coming up soon. Thanks again. Talk to you soon. Till next.